Very good evening, friends. Meeting again the session of philosophy, and we have started discussing about the chapter 23, the examination of the patient, the most practical part of Organon, and he started with the aphorism 84. But yesterday we have started with the aphorism 83 instead of 84 because the qualities of homeopathic physician in order to take a chronic case, which are very thoroughly mentioned in the 83, and there so four important qualities which we have learned over there. The first one, that is the he should be in freedom from prejudice. Then second one, the sound senses. Third one, attention in observing, and fourth one, that is the fidelity interest in picture of disease. And that's what we have discussed in this last session. And thereafter, we have read about the aphorism 84, where he explained how to approach with the case taking, the Hahnemannian concept which we have discussed. The philosophy, Kant's philosophy behind that aphorism, not yet discussed. So we have to start with Kant's philosophy or Kant's approach to explain this aphorism number 84. So we'll start with this, the philosophy, Kant's philosophy related with the aphorism number 84 in lecture of number 23. One of the most important things in securing the image of sickness is to preserve in simplicity what the patient tells us in his own way, unless he disagrees from the important things and talks about things that are foolish and not to the point. But as long as he confines his information to his own suffering, let him tell it in his own way, without interruption, and in the record, use his own language, only correcting his grammatical errors for the purpose of producing a record as perfect as possible. So he starts explaining whatever the Hahnemann have explained, and he explains that you should make it more simple. It should not be a very complex thing. It should be very simple. You just start interrogating with the patient, and it's simple way the patient narrates. Go on writing down each and every sentence in the very words, whatever the words patient has utilized. Just write it down in the same language so that you are able to catch what the patient is telling, what the patient is expressing. The reason behind that, the very words are important because you get the exact feeling of the patient, and because of which it can be easy for you to match the remedy to the patient. And that's why it is too important. And second important thing which he has mentioned over there, don't interrupt the patient unless he goes on talking some foolish things. If it is related with his case, just go on listening. You should be a very good listener in order to understand patient properly. And that's a very important thing which is necessary. Whenever you deal with any chronic case, it's your duty. Just put a question and go on listening, go on observing, go on observing each and every details of the patient so that you can get a thorough knowledge, understanding about the patient. If you use synonyms, be sure that they are synonyms and cannot be perverted. So what is it? It should be written in patient's language. If you are using a synonym, similar name for the words, then it should be very perfect. Otherwise, it may change the thought. Of course, when the woman speaks of her menstrual period as monthlies or as her show, the more suitable medical term is menses, which is synonym for those expressions and is more expressive than her own way of calling it a show. So, in general terms, you can substitute terms of expression so long as you do not change the idea. Of course, the changing of legs into limbs, and if you feel like making such change is not a change of thought, but be sure, making a change, it is not a change of thought. And he is very clearly expressing you should not change the words of the patient as far as possible. And if you are changing it for the purpose of understanding or to write it in medical terms, you use the very specific words which are very specific synonyms for those. And he has given two examples. In common language, menstrual cycle, the females they calls it monthlies, you write it down winces. Yes, because thought never changes, it remains same. Or if he is talking like limbs, instead of limbs, you write it down directly with the or if patient is talking in legs, then you write it down in the medical terminology limbs, because the thought never gets changed. And these are things which he has given example. Then he further says, it is one of the most important things in forming the record of the patient to be able to read it at the subsequent examination without being disturbed by the repeated statements of the patient. So when you start write it down in a proper case record form, because that record which you have to keep with yourself. Your if you write a record in a consecutive sentences, you will be so confused when hunting out the symptoms of the patient that you will be unable to form an image of that sickness in the mind. And then he writes, don't go on repeat writing same sentences again and again, or the sentences which have the similar meaning. It should not be a confused record. It in fact, whenever you read or you go through that record, it should be easy for you to catch what is specific in that, what is characteristic in that. So whenever you are write it down it is very proper manner. One more thing which he has mentioned over there, that every symptom should be written on a separate line, because if anything you have to add over there later, you can you are able to. It is truly impossible when the mind is full with the effort at hunting out something to listen with proper and concentrated attention. You should divide your page in such a manner that when the patient is talking and to you about this thing and that thing and the other thing of her symptoms, you can, with one glance of the eye, look down over the page of the record and see everything there is in that page. So your record should be a proper one. If whatever the patient is talking about, what happens? Patient never talks in a simple manner, everything expressed in a proper manner. There are many thoughts comes in patient's mind, and once he starts expressing about his disease, all of a sudden he enters into the expressing about some futures of mind, then he enters again into the personal history, because patient's thoughts comes in a haphazard manner. Then you should record it in a proper place so that it will be quite easy for you to find it out. That's why you should have a clear case paper, so you can put each and every sentence in a proper place. Because of proper case taking paper or record, it is easy to locate what is wrong with the patient, what is characteristic with the patient, and those things should be written in a proper manner. If your record is not so arranged, it is defective. See what he says. If your record is not so arranged, it is defective. Now, a record can be so arranged by dividing the page into three columns, the first of which contains the dates and prescription. The second, emphatic symptoms or heading, and third things, predicated of the symptoms. Thus, he gives the examples: date, the symptom, things predicated of the symptoms, aggravations and amelioration, and remedy. He has given you the way how one should write it down and how one should keep the records in future. If you write it down in a proper manner, it's quite easy to catch. And this method you have to develop. So after full case taking on your case record form, when you attach the follow-up form, it should be written in such a manner so it becomes very easy to catch the remedy, to catch the symptoms of the patient, the characteristic symptoms of the patient. So everything matters. How is your case paper? That also matters, which gives you exactly the idea regarding the patient's complaint. And that's why the format should be there to your case taking or case record. Making the format makes it easy for you, which guides you in further presentation. And what he says further, after the patient has detailed his suffering in his own way, and you have gone through them and discovered all things that you can predicate of his symptoms, then you can proceed to make inquiry of someone who has been with the patient. What he says, whatever the patient has told you, go on listening, write it down, and when patient finishes explaining, then the questioning to the attendant starts. Before that, you should not ask the attendants what is wrong with the patient. First, listen the patient, observe the patient, examine the patient, understand the patient, and then for further clarifications, you must ask the questions to the attendant. Then he can define, then he can explain it in a proper manner. So this is too important. No, sir, in study, in a study like this, with most of our private patients, there has been a nurse, sometimes only a sister or a mother or a wife, who has been observing all the sick individual has complaints of. The persons who are about him relate what he has complained of, how he has behaved with him, behaved himself, and all that they have remarked on him. So their attendant might be anyone. Attendant might be a wife or husband. Attendant might be a mother or father. Attendant might be any close relative. Attendant might be any friends. Yes, anyone can be a attendant. Anyone. Here you have to ask in detail if you want a specific information about the patient. That is also important. It gives you a clear-cut idea. And clear-cut ideas are very much necessary in order to complete the case record. Now, this should be listened to with great care. It is more important in this instance to decide whether the observer is more anxious, if the wife, whether she is not frightened concerning her husband, and so intermingles many of her notions and fears, which you must accept with discretion. If you are asking the history to the attendant, you must be cautious enough at the same time. You must think before adding it in your case taking format. What he is explaining? He is explaining that you should not, whenever you are writing down, just observe whether the patient's attendant is expressing his own fears or anxieties in his expression. If they are there, they are of no use because you are not finding the remedy of the patient, but you are finding remedy of the attendant. It should not happen. So this is too important. What you are observing, what you are understanding, what you are perceiving, your perception should be clear. And that's why what the patients and attendants are telling you, just be cautious. Get the nurse, if possible, to repeat the exact words of the patient. If such a thing can be done in acute suffering, it is worth more than the words or expressions of the nurse. The wife, for instance, because the more interested and anxious the person is, the less likely she will be to present truthful image. Not that she wants to deceive, but she is dreadfully wrought up, and more she thinks of what she has said, the greater his sufferings appear to her, and she exaggerates them. It is important to have the statement from one who is disinterested. So see, he is expressing over there that if you are taking into consideration the attendance history about the patient, then just see how much enthusiastic person is regarding all those things. Many times there might be any excitement with the wife about her husband, and she goes on expressing many more features which are not truth. And this exaggeration happens because of anxiety about her husband. And such things sometimes deceive you. You should not get deceived because of this. And for that purpose, what he says, if you are asking regarding the patient's complaints to an attendant, he should not have too much interest. Two or three of the observers who are intelligent having been consulted and their statements recording, the physician then notes his own observations. So after getting the history from two or three attendants, then the physician's role comes. Then physician starts questioning, then physician starts observing, then physician starts perceiving. All those things matters. He should describe the urine if there is anything peculiar about that. But if the urine and stool are normal, he need not care about description of these. It is. It has been the study of hundreds of years to find the best way to question witness in the court, and as a result, they have settled upon certain rules for obtaining evidence. Homeopathy also has rules for examining the case that must be followed with exactitude through the private practice. Among pupils, you have been taught here. I know some who have merely memorized, and some have even some have not even memorized, but have fallen away. These students are violating everything they have been taught. They have gone to low potencies, making greater and greater failures to the shame of tutor and the science they profess to follow. I expect some in the sound of my voice will be doing this 5 years from now. This is a warning. Stop before you go too far, or you will not feel the fault in your home. You will think you were hypnotized and led into the false way. If you neglect making a careful examination, the patient will be the first sufferer. But in the end, you yourself will suffer from it, and homeopathy also. He is explaining all those things. He explains that case taking, examination of the patient, is a very important thing. One must learn by heart. You must learn it from your teacher. You must follow the teacher. You must understand whatever your teacher has taught about the case taking and clinical examination as well as examination of the patient, and follow it thoroughly. If you overlook them, what happens? Ultimately, you cannot get the totality on the basis of prescription. If your totality fails, the remedy fails. It not only creates problems for the patient, but ultimately it creates problems for you because your practice never grows. And ultimately, it reflects in the homeopathic name of the homeopathy. And that's why one should be very, very sincere regarding his practice, regarding his learning, regarding his understanding, regarding the art of case taking, and that one should learn. The questions themselves that Hahnemann gives are not important, but they are suggestive and will lead you in a certain direction. So what he says, the how to form a question. The questionnaire should not be fixed. Questionnaire should be logical. Questions should be asked intellectually. Because if you are putting questions which are fixed, then there is a problem. It should not be fixed. It should be changeable according to the situation. According to each and every case, the question changes. It is not going to, it is the case taking is not going to the same with each and every patient. Every patient has a different aspect, and that's why with dealing with every patient is a different way. Your questions should be formed intellectually so that you can get a thorough idea of the patient. So, for example, you should think prior putting a question, and your question should be so nicely formed that patient can narrate all the things. For example, a chronic case is there in front of you, and if you want to ask exactly ODP, then you form your questions in such a manner. What is your problem? This is not the question. What happens? What is your problem? Patient says that I am having pain in abdomen. Finished. Nothing more than that. If you ask properly, tell me exactly all the details right from the start of your disease till today, how the things were going and what are your present. Then patients goes on narrating each and every detail right from the day he has suffered from first time and everything in proper manner. So questions, forming the questions is a very important thing, and it is an art. It is not only science, but it is an art. Here the intelligence comes into play because of which you can find it out exact question. So what is it? Question the patient, then the friends, and observe for yourself. If you do not obtain enough to prescribe on, go back to the particulars. So you ask the first questions to the patient, then to the attendants. Then your whole own role starts observing the patient, perceiving the patient. And if you get enough data to prescribe, it's well and good. But if you don't get a proper data, if still you are in a jumbling, then go to the each and every particular, try to complete it with the location, sensation, modality concomitant so that you get a characteristic. So this is the way. After much experience, you will become expert in questioning patients so as to bring out the truth. Store up material so as to use it and it will flow out as your language flows. You must put yourself on a level with the form of speech your patients use. So this is the way how to go ahead in the case taking. It's a matter of experience. It's a matter of your intelligence. It's a matter of your art. Everything comes into play. And then, day by day, when you start dealing with multiple patients, gradually your way of forming the questions develops. And once it develops properly, you get the useful data in your practice to find it out a right remedy. So all those things matters a lot. When you deal with the patient, all those things matters. That gives you exactly the proper remedies. And this is what he wants to explain over there, that you must put yourself on level with the form of speech your patients use. So the way patient talks, at least you must know their languages. At least when you are dealing with patients in specifically in Maharashtra, then you must know at least three languages. Your Maharashtrian Marathi language, either you must know Hindi properly, then you must know English properly, at least three languages. These are very essential. If you are practicing in Mumbai, you must have a knowledge of Gujarati because those peoples are more there. According to the place, you must develop that. If your patients are Muslim community, their Hindi is rather different. Then you talk with them with their own language. Because if you develop that technique, then it's rather simple to get the case properly. And this happens. Today I had two patients, Muslim patients. I talked with them, whole case taking was in their proper Hindi, Muslim Hindi. And then it becomes quite easy for me to get what I desired. To reach to the right simulum, it becomes simple way. And that's very, very essential and important. So the language should not become a barrier in your case taking. And that's what he explains over there. So he's trying to explain what Hahnemann wants to explain. The details regarding it, he tried to explain in this chapter. And all those details are very, very essential. So I think we'll stop over here in this line and tomorrow we'll finish this chapter. This is most important chapter from your philosophy because this is more practical and try to make or learn the common languages of your area so that you can get very easily the desired information which is of useful, which will be fruitful to find it out the right remedy. Make a habit of it. Talk in their own sense, and then it becomes very easy. So I think today we'll stop on this point and we'll continue on Monday, and we'll finish that specific chapter on Monday session. If any queries are there, yes, definitely we'll have a query discussion. Otherwise, we'll conclude and meet at 8 o'clock with Colchicum. Today, I'm going to share Colchicum, my experiences with Colchicum. It will be useful for everyone. So, thank you being there, and be there at 8 o'clock with the Colchicum lecture. Any question?
Sir, hello.
Yes, person.
Sir, when we are treating a case of cough, suppose if we give one medicine and after some time the symptoms are changing, sir. And then we have to change another remedy. In that case, if it is our family member, it is okay. We are seeing that case and we are changing. But in case of patients, how is it possible, sir?
In acute cases, make a habit of asking the patient to meet you within a day or 2 days in acutes, so that it becomes quite easy for you to find it out the state of the patient. Acutes, it happens many times that you have to change the remedies. And that's why my suggestion, whenever I'm dealing with the fever cases, I used to ask them to visit me daily, at least for 2 or 3 days, so that we can exactly find it out how whether your remedy is acting or not acting, and you can get the follow-up properly. And that is essential for that. So acutes make a follow-up daily. In chronics, it is not possible. In chronic, I always ask to meet me after 15 days. Because chronic, if you are prescribing for chronics and if you are finding it out a chronic remedy, it also takes its own way to act. You cannot change remedy off and on in chronics. If you are prescribing Drosera to the patient, Drosera, it takes 7 days to develop its proper action. So you should give the time for the chronic remedies to act. Should not go on changing remedies in chronics. So that's the answer of your question.
Okay, sir, suppose if in case of acute, Drosera is indicated. And then
if it is acute, Drosera is indicated, ask the patient to, if it is 100% Drosera, ask the patient to wait.
Okay. Okay. So one case can I discuss, sir? Case of cough.
You send it to me. That will be better.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Yes, Utpal, what's your question?
Sir, these are the season time changes here in Assam. So, sir, in case of this, we are getting so many patients of cough and cold, running nose. I'm usually starting. It is viral, so far as I know. I think we agree, sir. So I'm giving specifically arsenic album 30, and somewhat some of it is active, but few cases fail. I'm giving Bryonia. What should be the other medicine, sir?
You have to catch exactly what change is there. If it is too cold, affecting the patient, too much cold weather is there, then you might think of a parcel. If it is producing dryness in the patient's mouth or even on lips, it might be bryonia. It varies. It is not a fixed remedy. You should not make it fixed. You have to find it out exactly what change is there.
Yes, sir, it is right, but some it is viral. Viral is going on as far as I know. So in that cases, I'm getting results from arsenic album first.
It might be. It depends upon the weather.
Few cases
in
I'm
your
not.
Area. Yes, it depends upon the weather in your specific area.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So good night, and we'll meet at 8 o'clock with colchicum. Thanks a lot.